The frozen wind sliced through Owen Roth's coat like a blade as he crossed the old stone bridge, his boots crunching against ice-crusted snow, and he nearly missed the shape huddled beneath the arch, a figure so still it could have been a snow-covered rock, except for the faint green tint of exposed skin, and the way one arm remained curled protectively around something small and dark against her chest. Owen stopped mid-step, his breath clouding in the bitter air. The temperature had plummeted overnight, turning the usually manageable winter into something deadly. He had ventured out only because his last hen had stopped laying, and he needed to check the snares he had set near the frozen creek. Now he stared at what appeared to be an orc woman, half buried in snow, her lips tinged blue-gray against her green skin. He should have kept walking. Everyone in the village 3 miles back would have told him to do exactly that. Orcs were dangerous, they said. Monsters from the northern wastes who raided farms and killed without mercy. But Owen had been a field medic during the border conflicts, and he had seen enough death to recognize it approaching. This woman would not survive another hour in this cold. He slid down the embankment, snow cascading around his legs, and knelt beside her. Ice crystals clung to her dark hair, and her breathing came in shallow, barely visible puffs. She wore leather armor that had seen better days, cracked and worn thin in places. But what caught his attention was the bundle she protected so fiercely, a tiny orange kitten, its eyes still closed, pressed against her chest where her body heat had kept it alive. "Can you hear me?" Owen asked, knowing she probably could not. Her eyes remained closed, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the kitten. Some deep instinct still drove her to protect the creature even as she froze to death. Owen cursed under his breath. He could not carry both her and his pack, and he certainly could not leave her here. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then carefully pried the kitten from her grasp. The tiny creature mewed in protest, and he tucked it inside his shirt where his body heat would keep it warm. Then he positioned himself and hauled the orc woman onto his shoulders in a fireman's carry. She was heavier than a human woman would have been, her body dense with muscle even in her starved state. Owen grunted with effort and began the long trudge back to his homestead. His farmhouse sat a mile east of the bridge, isolated from the village by choice. After the war, he had wanted solitude, space to forget the things he had seen and done. Now that isolation would serve a different purpose. The journey took twice as long as it should have. Owen had to stop 3 times to rest, his legs burning and his lungs aching from the cold air. By the time his small farmhouse came into view, his muscles screamed and sweat froze on his skin despite the frigid temperature. He kicked open his door and stumbled inside, laying the orc woman on the rug before his fireplace. The embers from morning still glowed faintly. Owen fed the fire until flames licked at fresh logs, then turned his attention to his unexpected guest. The kitten squirmed inside his shirt, and he carefully extracted it and placed it in a basket lined with cloth near the hearth. Then he knelt beside the woman and began assessing her condition. Frostbite darkened the tips of her ears and fingers. Her pulse was thread and slow. He needed to warm her gradually, too fast, and he could send her into shock. Owen stripped away her frozen leather armor and the thin tunic beneath, trying to maintain clinical detachment as he worked. Her skin was a deep forest green, marked with old scars that told stories of a hard life. Small tusks protruded from her lower jaw, and her features, while different from human, held a striking beauty in their angular strength. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned and positioned her closer to the fire. Then he heated water and soaked strips of cloth, wrapping her hands and feet to slowly restore circulation. The kitten mewed pitifully from its basket, and Owen realized it was probably starving. He had no mother's milk, but he did have goat's milk from his neighbor's herd. He warmed some and used a clean cloth to let the kitten suckle drops from the fabric. The tiny creature latched on desperately, its small body vibrating with each swallow. Hours passed. Owen maintained the fire, checked the woman's pulse and breathing, and fed the kitten when it cried. Night fell, turning his windows into black mirrors that reflected the firelit interior. He dozed in his chair, jerking awake periodically to tend to his charges. Sometime near dawn, he woke to find green eyes watching him from the floor. The orc woman had turned her head and was staring at him with an expression of complete bewilderment. Her hand moved weakly, searching, and Owen realized what she sought. "The kitten is safe," he said quickly, keeping his voice low and calm. "Right here by the fire, see." He lifted the basket so she could see the orange ball of fur sleeping peacefully inside. Some of the tension left her body, though suspicion remained in her eyes. "Where?" Her voice came out as a rasp, barely audible. "My home. I found you under the bridge. You were freezing to death." Owen set the basket down and poured water into a cup. "Can you drink?" She eyed him warily but nodded. He helped her sit up enough to sip from the cup, supporting her shoulders with one hand. She drank greedily at first, then forced herself to slow down. When she finished, he lowered her back to the blankets. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why bring me here? I am orc." Owen shrugged. "You were dying. I am not in the habit of letting people die when I can prevent it. People." She said the word with bitter irony. "Your kind does not see orcs as people." He could not argue with that. Instead, he said, "You need food. Can you manage broth?" She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Owen went to his small kitchen and ladled some of the perpetual stew he kept simmering. He had learned during the war to always have something hot and nourishing ready. He brought the bowl back and helped her eat, spooning broth carefully into her mouth. "I am Kragara," she said after several spoonfuls. "Kragara of the Stonefoot clan, or I was." Owen Roth, what happened to you?" Kragara's expression hardened. "I showed mercy. My clan considers this weakness." She did not elaborate, and Owen did not press. He helped her finish the broth, then checked her hands and feet. The frostbite was not as severe as he had feared. She would likely keep all her fingers and toes, though they would hurt terribly as sensation returned. "The kitten," Kragara said suddenly. "It was crying under the bridge. Its mother was dead, frozen. I could not leave it. So you stayed there protecting it, even as you froze yourself." It was small, helpless. She said it as if this explained everything, as if sacrificing herself for a creature that was not even her own species was the most natural thing in the world. "You need rest," Owen said. "Sleep. I will watch over you both." Kragara's eyes drifted closed. Whether from trust or exhaustion, he could not tell. Soon her breathing deepened into sleep. Owen settled back in his chair and stared into the fire, wondering what in all the hells he was going to do now. The next several days fell into a rhythm. Kragara's strength returned slowly, her orc constitution fighting off the worst effects of exposure faster than a human would have managed. Owen prepared meals, changed bandages, and tended the fire while she recovered. The kitten, which Kragara had named Ember for its orange coat, grew stronger as well, its eyes opening to reveal bright blue irises that gazed around Owen's cottage with feline curiosity. Kragara did not speak much at first. She watched Owen constantly, as if waiting for some trick or betrayal. He understood. Trust did not come easily, especially for someone who had been cast out by her own people. On the fourth day, she managed to sit up on her own. Owen was repairing a harness at his table when he heard her moving and turned to find her examining her hands. The darkened skin from frostbite was peeling away, revealing new green skin beneath. They will heal, Owen said. You were fortunate. Fortunate. Kragara flexed her fingers, wincing. I do not feel fortunate. You are alive. So is Ember. At the kitten's name, Kragara's expression softened. Ember was curled in her basket, batting at a piece of string Owen had given her. Yes, she lives. This matters. What will you do when you are well? The question hung in the air between them. Kragara's jaw tightened. I do not know. I cannot return to my clan. To show weakness as I did protecting a human's animal is exile. If I am seen, they will kill me to erase the shame I brought upon them. That seems harsh. It is our way. She paused, or it was. I begin to question many things about our way. Owen set down the harness. You can stay here until you decide. The winter is brutal this year. Travel would be dangerous. You would let an orc remain in your home. You have a name, Kragara. I would let Kragara remain in my home at least until the spring thaw. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or the faint beginning of trust. Your village will not approve. My village is 3 miles away and minds its own business. I settled out here specifically so I would not have neighbors peering through my windows. You are strange for a human. I have been told that before. Over the following weeks, Kragara's health improved steadily. She began moving around the cottage, at first just short walks to test her legs, then longer periods of activity. Owen taught her the layout of his home, the single bedroom he had given over to her, the small loft where he now slept, the kitchen with its wood stove, the root cellar where he stored vegetables and preserved foods. She was curious about everything, asking questions in her direct way about how things worked and why he had chosen to live alone. Owen answered honestly, telling her about the war, about the things he had seen that made civilian life in a crowded village impossible to bear. She listened without judgment, and he found himself sharing more than he had intended. In return, she told him about orc culture, the rigid hierarchy, the emphasis on strength and dominance, the way any perceived weakness was ruthlessly punished. Her clan had been raiding human settlements along the border, and during one raid, she had found a human child hiding in a barn. The child had been perhaps 5 years old, terrified and crying. I should have killed him, Kragara said quietly as they sat by the fire one evening. Ember purred in her lap, having adopted Kragara as her mother. That was what was expected, but he reminded me of my younger brother before he died. Same eyes, same fear. I told him to run, and I claimed the barn was empty when my clan searched it. Someone saw, my war chief. He questioned why I would spare a human whelp. I said the child was too small to matter, not worth my blade. But he knew. He saw weakness in me. When I found the kitten frozen under that bridge and stayed to protect it, I had been fleeing his judgment for 3 days. He sent hunters after me. Owen absorbed this. Will they come here? Perhaps, if they track me this far, but the snows have been heavy. My trail is likely buried. But you do not know for certain. No, they sat in silence, watching the fire. Finally, Owen said, then we will deal with them if they come. You are under my roof. That means you are under my protection. Kragara turned to look at him, her green eyes reflecting firelight. You would fight my clan for me. You do not even know me. I know enough. You risked your life for a kitten. That tells me more about your character than 100 conversations could. She looked away, but not before he saw the emotion in her expression. No one had defended her before, he realized. Not ever. As winter deepened, they fell into an easy partnership. Kragara insisted on helping with chores once she regained her strength, and Owen discovered she was remarkably capable. She could chop wood with an efficiency that put his efforts to shame, her orc strength making quick work of tasks that took him hours. In return, he taught her to cook human food, to read and write in the common tongue, and to play the simple card games that helped pass long winter evenings. Ember grew rapidly, transforming from a helpless kitten into an energetic young cat who terrorized imaginary prey throughout the cottage. She would stalk along the rafters, pounce on shadows, and curl up between Owen and Kragara whenever they sat together. The cat became a bridge between them, a shared responsibility that created ease and familiarity. One morning, Owen woke to find fresh snow had fallen overnight, piling against the windows in deep drifts. He climbed down from the loft to discover Kragara already awake, stoking the fire to ward off the pre-dawn chill. She wore one of his old shirts as a night dress, the fabric straining slightly across her broader shoulders. "Could not sleep?" he asked. "Dreams," she said simply. He understood. He had his own nightmares, memories of war that surfaced when his guard was down. He joined her by the fire, and they sat together watching the flames until the sun rose pale and weak through the heavy clouds. "Owen," Kragara said after a long silence. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. Not orc, not monster, just me." He met her eyes and saw vulnerability there, carefully revealed. "You make it easy." Her hand moved tentatively toward his, then stopped, uncertain. Owen closed the distance, his fingers intertwining with hers. Her skin was warm, her grip strong but gentle. They sat like that as dawn light filled the cottage, neither speaking, both acutely aware they had crossed some invisible threshold. The moment broke when Ember launched herself from a rafter, landing squarely on Owen's head with all four paws extended. He yelped and Kragara laughed a real laugh, rich and uninhibited. The cat scrambled down to his lap, purring madly, utterly pleased with herself. "Your daughter has no respect for meaningful moments," Owen said dryly, extracting a claw from his scalp. "She is perfect," Kragara declared, scratching Ember's ears. The cat arched into the touch, purring louder. After breakfast, Owen needed to check his snares again. The henhouse had been unusually quiet. A fox or marten was likely stealing eggs. Kragara insisted on accompanying him, and he did not object. She bundled into spare clothes he had modified to fit her frame, and together they trudged through knee-deep snow toward the tree line. The winter forest was beautiful in its starkness, bare branches etched black against white snow and gray sky. Owen showed Kragara how to check snares without leaving too much scent, how to read tracks in the snow to determine what animals passed through. She absorbed the information with focused intensity, her hunter's instincts translating easily to this different kind of tracking. They caught 2 rabbits, which would supplement their food stores nicely. On the way back, Kragara suddenly grabbed Owen's arm and pulled him behind a thick pine tree. He started to question, but she pressed her finger to her lips, then pointed. 3 figures moved through the trees about 100 yards away. Even at this distance, Owen could see they were orcs large, armed, and moving with the purposeful gait of hunters following a trail. "Your clan." He whispered. Kragara nodded, her face grim. "The hunter pack. They have found my trail after all. Will they come to the house? Eventually. They are thorough. If they picked up signs of me this close, they will search every structure within 10 miles. Owen's mind raced through options. Fighting was out of the question. 3 orc warriors would overwhelm them easily. Running would not work in this snow, and besides, he had no intention of abandoning his home. That left talking, though he suspected orcs who came hunting exiles were not interested in conversation. "We go back," he said quietly. "Prepare." They retreated carefully, making sure not to draw attention. Once back at the cottage, Owen barred the door and checked the old sword he kept above the mantel, a remnant from his military service that he had hoped never to use again. Kragara watched him with dark eyes. "You should not fight for me," she said. If you give me to them, they will leave you in peace. No. Owen, no. He turned to face her fully. I told you, you are under my roof, my protection. I do not break my word. You will die. Probably not. I am surprisingly difficult to kill. But even if that were true, I would not hand you over to be murdered for the crime of showing compassion. Kragara stared at him, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed emotion. Why does a human care so much about an orc's life? Because I care about your life specifically. Because in the weeks you have been here, I have come to value you. Your strength, your kindness, your terrible jokes, the way you talk to Ember like she understands every word. Because you are my friend, Kragara, and I do not abandon my friends. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning beyond simple friendship. Before either could address it, a heavy knock sounded at the door. Human, a voice called in thickly accented common tongue. We know the exile is within. Send her out. Owen squeezed Kragara's shoulder once, then walked to the door. He did not open it. This is my home. The woman inside is my guest. You have no authority here. Rough laughter answered him. We have authority of blood and clan. She is exile, condemned. Her life is forfeit. Not under my roof it is not. A pause. Then, you are one human. We are 3 warriors of the Stonefoot clan. You cannot stop us. Perhaps not. Owen kept his voice level. But I am a veteran of the border wars. I know 17 ways to kill a man or an orc with my bare hands. I also know where to place a blade, so death comes slowly over many days. You can come in if you wish, but I promise at least one of you will die badly, and the others will carry scars to remind them of this day. Another pause, longer this time. Owen could hear muffled conversation in the orcish tongue. Finally, the exile is not worth this trouble, but know that we will return. We will watch. If she leaves this structure, she is ours. Understood? He listened to footsteps crunching away through snow, then moving into the forest. Only when the sounds faded completely did he step back from the door. Kragara stood frozen in the center of the room, Ember clutched to her chest. They will do as they said, she whispered. Watch and wait. I am trapped here. Then we wait them out. Winter will not last forever. When spring comes, we will figure out what to do. That could be months. Then we spend months together. I can think of worse fates. Kragara set Ember down carefully. The cat immediately began investigating the fresh rabbit Owen had set by the kitchen. You should not have done this. Now you are tied to my fate. I chose this, just as you chose to protect Ember when you could have walked past and saved yourself. He crossed to her and took her hands in his. We all make choices about what kind of person we want to be. This is mine. She looked down at their joined hands as pale against her green skin, human and orc, everything society said should not touch. I do not understand you, Owen Roth. That makes 2 of us. Despite the threat outside, life in the cottage continued. The watchers never revealed themselves, but Owen occasionally glimpsed movement in the tree line or found tracks too large to be from natural animals circling his property. He and Kragara maintained their routines, though they no longer ventured far from the house. The forced proximity had an unexpected effect. The connection between them, which had been building gradually, intensified. Owen found himself acutely aware of Kragara's presence, the way she hummed tunelessly while cooking, the strength in her movements, the careful gentleness with which she handled Ember. And he caught her watching him sometimes with an expression he could not quite read. One evening, as they played cards by the fire, Kragara said abruptly, "Do I frighten you?" Owen considered the question seriously. "No, should you? I am orc. I am stronger than you, trained in combat. I could hurt you easily. You could, but you would not." "How do you know?" "Because I know you." He laid down his cards, a poor hand anyway. "Kragara, I have known cruel humans and kind orcs. I have seen humans commit atrocities that would make your clan proud, and I have seen monsters show more honor than supposed civilized men. Species does not determine character. Choice does. She absorbed this silently. Then, what if I told you I am developing feelings that are inappropriate for an orc to have toward a human? Owen's heart stuttered. What if I told you I have been having the same feelings? Then we would both be foolish. Probably. They stared at each other across the small table. Ember chose that moment to leap onto the cards, scattering them everywhere and breaking the tension. Kragara laughed, but Owen saw her hand tremble slightly as she gathered the fallen deck. The unspoken thing between them grew heavier over the following weeks. They moved around each other with careful awareness, attraction and uncertainty creating a charged atmosphere. Owen caught himself imagining what it would be like to kiss her, to trace the line of her jaw, to know if her lips were as soft as they appeared despite the small tusks framing them. And from the way Kragara looked at him, sometimes hungry and hesitant, he suspected she had similar thoughts. The stalemate broke during a particularly brutal storm. Wind howled around the cottage, and snow piled so high against the door they could barely force it open to bring in more firewood. The temperature plummeted, and even with the fire roaring, cold seeped through the walls. "We should sleep down here tonight," Owen said, eyeing the loft. "Heat rises, it will be warmer near the fire." Kragara nodded agreement. They arranged blankets on the floor, creating a makeshift bed large enough for both of them. It was practical, nothing more. Except when they lay down, they were suddenly very aware of each other's presence, separated by mere inches. Ember, oblivious to the tension, curled up between them and fell asleep immediately. Owen listened to the storm rage outside and tried not to think about how close Kragara was, how he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Owen," her voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes." "If circumstances were different, if I were not exiled, if you were not human, would you want to court me?" His breath caught. Honesty seemed the only option. "Yes, even though I am orc, because you are you, Kragara, the woman who saved a kitten at the cost of her own life. The woman who makes me laugh and challenges me and has become the best part of my days." He heard her shift, felt rather than saw her turn toward him. Ember grumbled sleepily at being disturbed but did not wake. "I have never felt this way before," Kragara whispered. "Like my chest is too small to contain everything I feel when you look at me. I know the feeling. What do we do about it?" Owen reached across Ember and found Kragara's hand in the darkness. "We could start by acknowledging it exists, and then we could see where it leads. Your people would reject you. An orc lover is. I do not care what my people think. I stopped living for others' approval a long time ago. My clan has already cast me out. I have nothing to offer you. You have yourself. That is enough." He felt her fingers tighten around his. They lay like that, hands joined over their sleeping cat, until exhaustion pulled them both into dreams. Morning came with weak sunlight filtering through windows half buried in snow. Owen woke to find himself curled around Kragara, her back against his chest, his arm draped over her waist. Ember had migrated to the top of Kragara's head and was purring contentedly. Neither human nor orc moved, both pretending to still be asleep while processing this development. Finally, Kragara said, "So we are doing this, appears so. People will call you insane. Let them." She turned in his arms to face him. In the morning light, her eyes were the color of new spring leaves, flecked with gold. Her hand came up to touch his face, rough fingertips tracing his jawline with wondering gentleness. "I have never been allowed to want something soft before," she said. "Orcs do not do softness. We conquer, we take, we dominate. But I do not want to conquer you, Owen. I want to understand you. I want to be near you. I want to learn what it means to choose affection instead of having it forced. Then we will learn together. I am new to this too. The wanting, the allowing myself to feel again. He closed the distance between them carefully, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. Their lips met, and it was awkward at first navigating her small tusks, finding the right angle, but then they found their rhythm. She tasted like the honey tea they had drunk last night, sweet and warm. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "That was good," Kragara said, slightly dazed. "Very good," Owen agreed. Ember meowed loudly, demanding breakfast and interrupting the moment. They laughed and separated, but the wall between them had crumbled completely. Throughout breakfast and the day's chores, they kept finding excuses to touch a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing while passing items, sitting closer than necessary by the fire. That night they did not even pretend to sleep separately. Owen came down from the loft with his blanket and pillow, and Kragara made space for him in her makeshift bed. They lay together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her arm. "Tell me about your family," she said. "Not much to tell. My parents died when I was young. An uncle raised me until I was old enough to join the army. No siblings, no close relatives. The army was my family for years until I could not stomach it anymore." "What made you leave?" "Too much death. Too many orders to do things that ate at my soul. There was a village," he stopped, the memory still sharp. "We were told they were harboring enemy forces. We burned it. Afterward, we found mostly women, children, elderly, no soldiers, just people trying to survive. I carried a little girl out of the ruins. She could not have been more than 7. She died in my arms from smoke inhalation." Kragara's arms tightened around him. "That is when you decided to stop. That is when I realized I had become the monster I thought I was fighting. I finished my service term and came here. Built this place with my own hands, trying to build something instead of destroying. You are not a monster, Owen. Neither are you, but we have both been called that, have we not?" She nodded against his chest. "My clan tells stories to the young ones about the humans who hunt orcs for sport, who see us as animals to be exterminated. They teach us that humans cannot be trusted, that they will smile while sliding a knife between your ribs. And then I met you, and nothing made sense anymore. Maybe the world is more complicated than either of our people want to admit. Maybe." She tilted her head to look up at him. "Or maybe we are both just strange individuals who do not fit our people's expectations. I can live with being strange." She smiled, her tusks catching the firelight. "As can I." They kissed again, longer this time, hands exploring with growing confidence. Owen marveled at the contradiction of her strength that could snap him like kindling, wielded with such careful tenderness. When his fingers found a scar on her shoulder, she pulled back. "From my first raid," she explained. "Human soldier with a spear. I was 16, barely trained. I thought I was going to die. But you did not. No, my brother saved me. Took the soldier's head off with his axe." Her expression darkened. 2 years later, my brother died in another raid. Stupid, pointless. He bled out in the mud over a farm that produced nothing we needed. The war chief called him a hero. I called it a waste." Owen pulled her closer. "I am sorry. It was long ago, but it changed me, made me question what we were doing, why we kept fighting. No one else questioned. To doubt the war chief is to doubt the clan. So I stayed silent and did what I was told, until I could not any more." They shared their scars that night, physical and emotional. Owen told her about the friends he had lost, the choices that still haunted him. Kragara described the rigid brutality of orc culture, the way compassion was beaten out of children until only the strongest and hardest survived. They bore witness to each other's pain, and in doing so, lightened the burden of carrying it alone. Winter held the world in its grip for 2 more months. During that time, Owen and Kragara built something neither had expected to find: a partnership based on mutual respect and growing love. They worked together maintaining the homestead, played with Ember, who had grown into a sleek young cat, and spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. The orc watchers never left. Owen occasionally spotted them at the tree line, patient and implacable. They were waiting for Kragara to leave the protection of the house, to give them the opportunity to fulfill their mission. It was a siege without violence, but no less threatening for its subtlety. "Spring will come," Kragara said one evening as they watched the sun set through the window. "The snows will melt." What then? Owen had been thinking about this. "We have options. We could try to reach the southern territories. I have heard they are more accepting of mixed communities there. That is months of travel through dangerous lands. True. Or we could stay here and face the problem directly. Fight my clan. Owen, they will kill you, not fight. Negotiate." Kragara looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "You cannot negotiate with the Stonefoot clan. They do not compromise. Everyone negotiates. It is just a matter of finding what they want." He turned from the window to face her. "Your clan wants you dead because you represent weakness. But what if we could prove that your so-called weakness is actually strength?" "How?" "I am still working on that part." She laughed despite herself. "You are mad, probably. But I am also determined. I will not let you live the rest of your life trapped in this cottage, afraid to step outside. And I will not run with you to the south, always looking over our shoulders. We need to resolve this. And if your plan fails, then at least we tried." The thaw came gradually, snow melting into mud, streams swelling with runoff. The world transformed from white to brown to the first tentative greens of new growth. Owen planted his spring garden while Kragara watched from the window, frustrated by her confinement but unwilling to risk leaving one morning. Owen woke to find an arrow embedded in his door. He yanked it out and found a message wrapped around the shaft, written in crude common tongue. "Spring comes. Exile's protection ends. She leaves or we come in." Owen showed the message to Kragara. She read it with a stony expression. "They are tired of waiting. Let them be tired. We need more time." "We do not have more time. Owen, you must let me go. I will lead them away from here into the forest. At least that way you will be safe." "Absolutely not. It is the only way. It is not." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Kragara, I love you. I am not letting you sacrifice yourself when there might be another option." She froze. "What did you say?" "I love you. I should have said it before, but I am saying it now. I love your strength and your kindness and your terrible singing voice, and the way you are patient with Ember even when she ruins your clothes with her claws. I love how you see the world, how you question everything, how you chose compassion when your whole culture told you it was weakness. I love you and I am not losing you." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I love you too, which is why I must leave. I cannot let them kill you because of me." "Then help me come up with a better plan, please." They spent the day strategizing, discarding idea after idea. As evening approached, Owen thought he might have something. What if you challenged them? Challenged them to what? Single combat. Orc tradition, yes. If a warrior is accused unjustly, they can demand trial by combat to prove their worth. This is not an accusation, this is exile. Is it though? Think about it. You were exiled for showing mercy to a human child and protecting a kitten. But what you really did was show superior judgment. That child was no threat. Killing it would have served no purpose. You chose the tactically sound option, sparing effort for real threats. And the kitten? You demonstrated loyalty and protection of the vulnerable, which are warrior virtues among orcs, are they not? Kragara's eyes widened. You want me to argue that I showed warriors judgment, not weakness. Exactly. And if they disagree, you prove it with your blade. You beat their best warrior in single combat, and by orc law they have to accept your interpretation. It is insane. The war chief will never agree. He might if we frame it correctly. Orcs value strength above all. Prove you are strong and the reason for your exile becomes meaningless. She paced the room, thinking, I would have to fight Kresh the Breaker. He is the war chief's champion. I have seen him kill 4 warriors without breathing hard. Can you beat him? Kragara stopped pacing, her jaw set with determination. Maybe, if I fight smart instead of strong. He relies on raw power, but I learned some things from watching human soldiers. Speed and technique can overcome power. Then we try. Tomorrow morning I will go to the Watchers and issue the challenge on your behalf. You, Owen, no, they will kill you the moment you leave this house. Not if I approach under a parley flag. Even orcs respect that. You are risking everything on a maybe. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. You are worth any risk. Morning came too quickly. Owen prepared carefully, tying a strip of white cloth to a long stick to serve as his parley flag. Kragara helped him dress, her hands shaking slightly as she adjusted his coat. If this goes wrong, she started. It will not. But if it does, I want you to know that these months with you have been the happiest of my life. You gave me something I never thought I could have. A home, love, acceptance. He kissed her deeply. Then I will make sure you get to keep those things. Trust me. He walked out the door before fear could stop him. The morning air was crisp and clean, smelling of thawed earth and new growth. Owen raised his parley flag high and walked toward the tree line where he knew the Watchers hid. He made it 50 yards before 3 orc warriors emerged from cover. They were massive, scarred, and armed to the teeth. The largest one, nearly 7 feet tall with a jaw like a bear trap, stepped forward. You are the human protecting the exile, the warrior rumbled. I am Owen Roth, and I carry a message from Kragara of the Stonefoot clan. She demands trial by combat to challenge her exile. She claims she was cast out not for weakness but for wisdom, and she will prove her worth against your champion. The orcs exchanged glances. The big one, who Owen assumed was the war chief, sneered. She hides behind you like a coward. Where is her courage now? She is inside, waiting for your answer. Will you grant trial by combat, or does the Stonefoot clan fear one exiled warrior? The war chief's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare question our courage, human? I question why you need 3 warriors to hunt 1 orc woman. Unless you doubt your ability to defeat her in fair combat. It was a calculated risk, appealing to pride and honor. For a long moment, Owen thought it might backfire. Then the war chief laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Very well. She wants to fight. She will fight Kresh the Breaker at noon today, in the clearing beyond your house. When she dies, human, you will have only yourself to blame for giving her false hope. And if she wins, she will not. But if she does, the war chief's expression darkened. Then her exile is lifted and she may go where she wills. We do not pursue her further. This I swear on clan honor. Owen inclined his head. Noon, then. May the best warrior win. He walked back to the cottage, forcing himself not to run despite the prickling sensation of eyes watching him. Once inside, he found Kragara waiting anxiously, Ember clutched in her arms. Well, she demanded. Noon, against Kresh the Breaker. If you win, your exile is lifted. She set Ember down carefully. Then I must prepare. Owen helped her check her leather armor, repaired and reinforced over the winter months. She had kept up her training in the cottage, maintaining her strength and reflexes through exercises. Now she moved through combat forms with lethal grace, loosening her muscles and centering her mind. As the sun climbed toward noon, Owen produced something he had been working on in secret, a new blade he had forged in his small workshop, using techniques learned from an old weaponsmith during the war. The sword was balanced for Kragara's strength and reach, the edge honed to razor sharpness. "You made this?" she asked, testing the weight. "I started it weeks ago, hoping we would find a way for you to fight free. It is not fancy, but it is sound." She kissed him. "It is perfect, like you." They walked to the clearing together, hand in hand. The 3 orc warriors waited there, along with 2 more who had apparently arrived overnight. Kresh the Breaker was even more intimidating up close, 8 feet of solid muscle and scar tissue, holding a massive double-bladed axe like it weighed nothing. The war chief stepped forward. "Kragara, you have requested trial by combat. The rules are simple. Fight until one surrenders or dies. The victor's interpretation of events becomes truth. Are you prepared?" "I am," Kragara said firmly. "Then begin." Kresh charged immediately, his axe swinging in a brutal arc meant to end the fight in one blow. Kragara rolled under it, the blade missing her by inches. She came up slashing, her sword scoring a shallow cut across Kresh's thigh. He roared and spun, faster than something his size should have been able to move. The next several minutes were a blur of violence. Kresh fought with raw power, each swing of his axe capable of cleaving Kragara in half if it connected. But she was faster, using her smaller size to stay mobile, dodging and weaving while landing precise strikes. Blood flowed from a dozen cuts on Kresh's arms and torso, though none were deep enough to slow him significantly. Owen watched with his heart in his throat, resisting the urge to interfere. This was Kragara's fight. She had to win it herself, or the victory would mean nothing. Kresh changed tactics, feinting high then sweeping low with the axe. The blade caught Kragara's leg and she went down hard. The big orc roared in triumph and raised his axe for a killing blow. Kragara kicked out with her uninjured leg, catching Kresh in the knee. His leg buckled and he stumbled. In that instant, Kragara surged up and drove her sword through his shoulder, angling down to avoid vital organs but destroying the muscles that controlled his axe arm. Kresh bellowed in pain and rage. His axe fell from nerveless fingers. Kragara kicked it away and pressed her blade to his throat. "Yield," she commanded. Kresh glared at her with hate-filled eyes, but his honor allowed only one response. "I yield." Kragara stepped back, lowering her sword. She turned to the war chief. "I have proven my worth. My exile is unjust. I showed wisdom in sparing that child and strength in protecting the innocent. I am no exile. I am Kragara Stonefoot, warrior of my clan, and I have earned my name." The war chief's expression was unreadable. For a long moment, Owen thought he might refuse to honor the agreement. Then the big orc nodded slowly. "You have proven yourself. Your exile is lifted. But hear this, Kragara, you have chosen a human over your clan. Do not expect welcome when you return." "I do not intend to return," Kragara said steadily. "I have found a new home." The war chief snorted but said nothing more. He gestured to the other warriors, including the wounded Kresh, and they melted back into the forest. Within moments, the clearing was empty except for Owen and Kragara. She limped to him and collapsed into his arms. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it. That was incredible." "I could not have done it without you. Your blade, your faith in me," her voice broke. "Owen, I was so afraid." "I know, but you were stronger than your fear." They held each other in the clearing as spring sunlight filtered through new leaves. Eventually, they returned to the cottage, where Ember greeted them with loud meows of displeasure at having been left alone. Owen tended Kragara's leg, wound painful but not serious, while she fussed over Ember and tried not to wince. That evening, as they sat by the fire with Ember purring between them, Kragara said. "What happens now?" "Now we live," Owen said simply. "We plant the garden, raise Ember, repair the barn roof before it collapses completely. We live the life we choose, not the one others tried to force on us. Together, if you will have me." She took his hand, intertwining their fingers, human and orc, pale and green, different but perfectly matched. Always. The next few months proved her word true. They worked the farm together, Kragara's strength making tasks that had been burdensome for Owen alone manageable for them both. She learned to plant and harvest, to preserve food and tend animals. He learned orc techniques for hunting and tracking, skills that had been lost to him during his years of isolated farming. The village eventually learned about Kragara's presence, of course. A few brave souls ventured out to Owen's homestead, driven by curiosity or concern. They found him clearly happy, clearly safe, and clearly determined to defend his choice. Most left shaking their heads at his strangeness, but a few, particularly old widow Henrik, who had no patience for bigotry, welcomed Kragara with warm pragmatism. "An extra pair of strong hands is always useful," the widow declared. "And any woman who will save a kitten at risk to herself is decent in my book, green skin or not." Slowly, cautiously, a few other villagers followed the widow's lead. They hired Kragara for heavy labor moving stones, clearing land, tasks that required orc strength. She earned coin and grudging respect, proving through consistent reliability that orcs could be trusted neighbors. Summer brought long days of work and longer evenings of contentment. Owen taught Kragara to read more complex texts, and she taught him orcish songs that spoke of mountains and ancient battles. Ember grew into a skilled mouser, keeping the barn and cottage free of vermin while demanding tribute in the form of ear scratches and choice scraps of fish. One evening in late summer, as fireflies danced in the growing darkness, and Ember chased them with enthusiastic futility, Owen took Kragara's hand and led her to the small hill behind the cottage. From there, they could see his fields, now thriving with crops they had planted together. "This is ours," he said. "Not mine, ours. I want to make it official." Kragara looked at him questioningly. He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple ring from his pocket, hammered silver with a small green stone he had found in the creek bed, polished until it shone. "Kragara, you saved a kitten when any sensible person would have kept walking. You risked your life for an innocent creature, and in doing so, you saved me too. You gave me back something I thought I had lost in the war, the ability to hope, to trust, to love. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you have made me?" Tears tracked down her green cheeks, catching the last light. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and they kissed as the sun set fire to the horizon. Ember, having finally caught a firefly, pranced up the hill to show them her prize, letting the insect go to watch it fly away, then immediately chasing it again. "Our daughter approves," Kragara said with a watery laugh. "She has excellent judgment like her mother." They married a month later, in a simple ceremony at the cottage with widow Henrik and a few sympathetic villagers as witnesses. The local priest had refused to conduct the service, unnatural union. He had called it, but the widow's daughter had trained as a lay minister and performed the rites with solemn dignity. Owen and Kragara spoke their vows standing before the fireplace where he had first tended her frozen body, where they had shared countless meals and conversations, where they had built their love from nothing more than kindness and hope. They promised to honor each other, to stand together against whatever might come, to build a life based on choice rather than expectation. As autumn painted the world in gold and crimson, they prepared for their first winter as a married couple. The barn was repaired, the root cellar stocked with preserved foods, firewood stacked high against the house. Ember, now full-grown, supervised all preparations with feline authority. Word reached them that the Stonefoot clan had moved further north, following migrating herds away from human settlements. The war chief had been challenged by a younger orc who spoke of peace with humans rather than endless raiding. Violence still erupted along the border, but increasingly there were also attempts at communication, at finding common ground. "Maybe things are changing," Kragara said when Owen told her the news. "Maybe we are not as alone as we thought. Maybe. Or maybe we just have to be patient. Change does not happen overnight. Look at us being wise." She grinned at him, her tusks catching the firelight. "When did that happen? I blame you. You are a terrible influence." She laughed and pulled him close for a kiss that quickly turned heated. They retired early that night, leaving Ember to guard the hearth while they lost themselves in each other's warmth. Winter came again, but it held no threat this time. Owen and Kragara faced the cold with full stores and full hearts. They spent long evenings by the fire, Kragara learning to knit, her large fingers surprisingly deft with the needles, while Owen repaired tools and carved small toys. Ember claimed the warmest spot near the fire and judged their efforts with typical cat disdain. On the coldest night, when wind howled around the cottage and snow drifted high against the windows, Kragara said, "Do you ever regret it, finding me under that bridge?" Owen looked up from the axe handle he was sanding. "Never, not once, do you regret being saved, regret finding you?" She shook her head firmly. "Never, though I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had walked past that bridge, if I had left Ember to freeze. You would not have. It is not in your nature to abandon someone who needs help. Perhaps. Or perhaps I was changing already, becoming something my clan could not accept. Either way, I am grateful, for all of it, even the pain of exile, because it led me here. To a drafty cottage in the middle of nowhere with a strange human and a tyrannical cat. To home," she corrected softly. "To love. To the life I choose instead of the one I was born into." He set aside his work and moved to sit beside her, pulling her into his arms. Ember complained at being displaced but moved to Owen's lap with poor grace. They sat like that, the three of them, while the storm raged outside and warmth surrounded them within. Spring returned, as it always does. The world thawed and greened, and Owen and Kragara planted their garden together, working side by side in the soft earth. Ember hunted in the fields, bringing home mice and voles and occasionally a bird, presenting her kills with obvious pride. On a morning when apple blossoms scented the air, and the sky stretched blue and endless overhead, Kragara told Owen she was pregnant. He froze in the middle of tilling soil, the hoe falling from his hands. "Pregnant, but I thought I did not know if humans and orcs could. Apparently we can." She smiled nervously. "I am frightened, Owen. I do not know what to expect. Will the child be healthy? Will it be more orc or more human?" What if he pulled her into his arms, silencing her fears with a kiss? "Whatever happens, we face it together. Our child will be loved and wanted and cared for. That is all that matters. You are certain?" Completely. Her arms tightened around him. I love you too, both of you." The pregnancy progressed through summer and into autumn. Widow Henrik, who had attended countless births, visited regularly to check on Kragara's health. The child grew strong, and Kragara bloomed despite her fears. Her skin took on an extra glow, and her strength seemed inexhaustible. Owen built a cradle from oak wood, carving protective symbols into the sides, human and orc traditions mixed together. Kragara sewed blankets and tiny clothes, her large fingers managing the delicate stitches with determined concentration. Ember investigated all preparations with great interest, apparently understanding that change was coming. As autumn faded toward winter, Kragara went into labor. It was long and difficult. Half-orc children were apparently larger than purely human babies, but Widow Henrik guided them through with calm competence. Owen held Kragara's hand, wiped her forehead, and whispered encouragement until finally, as snow began to fall outside, their daughter was born. She was perfect. Her skin was a light sage green, softer than her mother's deeper forest tone. Tiny ears came to gentle points, and though she had no tusks yet, the bones of her jaw hinted she would develop small ones as she grew. Dark hair crowned her head, and when she opened her eyes, they were Owen's exact shade of brown. "She is beautiful," Owen whispered, tears streaming down his face. "What should we call her?" Kragara asked, exhausted but radiant. They had discussed names for months without deciding. Now Owen looked at his daughter, this impossible miracle who should not exist according to both their peoples, and knew. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope," Kragara smiled. "Hope Roth. It is perfect." They raised Hope with love and intention, teaching her both human and orc traditions. She learned to read and write in common tongue, but also to speak the guttural syllables of Orcish. She helped in the garden and learned to track in the forest. She grew up knowing she was different, but never feeling lesser for it. Ember appointed herself Hope's guardian, sleeping in her cradle and later following the toddler through the house to ensure she came to no harm. The cat aged gracefully, her orange fur gaining white around the muzzle, but her devotion never wavering. Other children appeared over the years, some orc-human like Hope, some fully human, a few orc foundlings that Kragara could not turn away when they showed up hungry and afraid. Owen and Kragara's cottage expanded, rooms added as the family grew. The farm flourished, worked by many hands. The village slowly changed its attitude, not all at once, but gradually. Hope and the other children played with human children, and it became normal to see green skin beside pale, tusks beside smooth teeth. Prejudice did not disappear, it never does, but it diminished, pushed back by the simple reality of children laughing together. Years passed. Owen's hair went gray, and lines appeared at the corners of Kragara's eyes. Hope grew into a strong, intelligent young woman who became a bridge between two peoples, speaking in councils and helping negotiate treaties. Other half-orc children followed her example, creating a new generation that belonged to both worlds and neither, forging their own identity. Ember lived to a remarkable age, finally passing peacefully in her sleep curled up on the hearth where she had spent so many years. They buried her under the apple tree, and Hope carved a marker. Ember, who was loved. More years passed. Owen and Kragara grew old together, their love deepening rather than fading. They sat together on the porch they had built, watching their grandchildren, some green, some pale, all precious, play in the yard where Hope had once played. "You remember the day we met?" Kragara asked, her hand in his as it had been countless times over the decades. "I found you half frozen under a bridge," Owen said. "You were protecting a kitten. You could have walked past. So could you?" She smiled, her tusks gray now but her eyes still bright. "I suppose we are both foolish then. The best kind of foolish." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the fields they had worked together, surrounded by the family they had built from nothing more than kindness and hope and stubborn refusal to accept the world as it was told to them. On a spring morning years later, when apple blossoms once again scented the air, Owen Roth died peacefully in his sleep with his wife's hand in his, and his family surrounding him. He left behind children and grandchildren who bore his name and his kindness, and a legacy that proved love could cross any divide. Kragara lived another 5 years after Owen's passing. She spent those years telling stories to the youngest grandchildren, teaching them about their grandfather who had saved an orc under a bridge, about a tiny kitten named Ember, about choosing compassion over tradition. When her time came, she went peacefully, buried beside Owen under the old oak tree where they had planted Hope's first garden. Hope inherited the cottage and the farm. She raised her own children there, teaching them the lessons her parents had taught her, that kindness matters more than species, that love is stronger than prejudice, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is protect something small and helpless, even when the cost seems too high. The bridge where Owen found Kragara still stands. Travelers crossing it sometimes see carved words in the stone, placed there by Hope decades after her parents' deaths. Here 2 lives changed forever. Here love began with an act of mercy. And in the cottage that Owen built and Kragara made a home, generations continue to live and love and remember the story of an orc woman who saved a kitten, and a human man who saved them both, and how their impossible love changed the world, one small act of kindness at a time. The legacy they left was not written in treaties or laws, though those came too. It was written in the faces of their descendants, in the mixed communities that grew along the border, in the slow shift from hatred to tolerance to acceptance. It was written in every moment someone chose compassion over cruelty, mercy over violence, love over fear. Some stories end with dramatic battles or world-changing events. This one ended quietly, with an old man and an old woman holding hands as they watched their family play in the fading light. But quiet endings can be the most powerful kind, because they prove that sometimes the smallest choices, stopping to help someone in need, protecting a helpless creature, opening your heart to someone different, can echo through generations. The cottage still stands today, preserved by Hope's descendants as a reminder. Visitors can see the cradle Owen carved, the blankets Kragara sewed, the hearth where Ember kept watch. They can walk the fields that were planted by 2 people who refused to let prejudice define their possibilities. And sometimes, on winter mornings when snow falls thick and soft, travelers crossing the old stone bridge swear they can hear faint sounds: a kitten's mew, a woman's laugh, a man's gentle voice. Just echoes, probably. Tricks of wind and memory. Or perhaps some loves are so strong they leave imprints on the world, permanent as the stone bridge that witnessed where it all began, enduring as the hope that gave their daughter her name, eternal as the simple truth that kindness and courage can change everything.